Now, the most reasonable talk show host from Sop Choppy to the Redneck Riviera, here is Bob Kerrigan.
And thank you for joining us tonight. Bob Kerrigan and Bill Rankin here to talk about some issues in the news. After Mr. Rankin launched the missile on the poor Teamsters Union and the United Auto Workers, I started to look at it because I wanted to be objective, and there were numbers being thrown out. $70 an hour. Nobody ought to make $70 an hour. The average American worker makes $27, $28 an hour, and nobody ought to make $70 an hour. And I cannot tell you the number of people, and I'll find this story in a minute, the number of people that respectable, news sources all quoted the same number. Yeah. And you know what the $70 an hour actually is? Because initially I thought it was wages plus the legacy costs. You know what it is? Management's cost accounting analysis. Management calculated the cost of a vehicle based on their average labor time and put $70 an hour. That probably included, no kidding, the water in the cooler.
Give us the right number.
28
we'll deal
bucks,
with that.
$28 an hour is posted on the United Auto Workers website. That's the wage.
Not an unimpeachable source.
Well, I'm just saying, it wasn't 70, and it was $3 different than Toyota. Now it turns out that almost all of these Toyota costs are underwritten, and certainly in Japan, by the government. So it's completely distorted the cost of vehicles.
You would expect a labor union, and I said this
United Auto Workers.
You're going to expect a labor union to act in their interest and try to get the highest wages.
Of course.
And that's what you expect, and you shouldn't bash them too much. But here's what's going on. The UAW has bought all these politicians, mostly Democrats, and they do things like the two-fleet rule. Now, GM makes really good small cars in Europe. They can't import them and sell them here to meet corporate average fuel economy requirements because the Detroit politicians don't want that, and they block that. I mean, you have to have the U.S. fleet and the overseas fleet meet the numbers separately, and that whole thing is not saving an ounce of gas. What it's doing is making sure that the UAW has jobs building expensive small cars that people don't want to buy.
You're not blaming all that on the union. I mean, management's tied right into that.
Well, management made mistakes, but the union combined with the politicians have gotten some really bad results. GM can make some good cars. It's not all the union's fault. Some of it's the union's fault. Some of it's the politicians' fault. Some of it's the management's fault.
Yeah. The blue-collar people in this country will look at allowing the destruction of our automobile manufacturing sector, which it essentially will. You say they're going to reorganize and they'll come back, but it will be a devastating blow to them and to all the subsidiary companies and suppliers and all of that. The average person in this country is going to say, now, just a minute. You destroyed this company, which is really the last great manufacturing we have in this country other than aircraft manufacturing.
We destroyed them by only giving them $17 billion?
No, wait,
and not giving them more?
Just a second. That you allowed that to happen in this country, and yet you provided 10 times that in one payment to one giant insurance company for which there's nobody making $28 an hour. They're all high-price executives, and they're all loading up.
That's a good point.
10 times as much.
You wasted however many hundreds of billions on AIG, we ought to waste it on this.
It's not just AIG, it's Bank of America, it's Goldman Sachs, it's all of these. There's 6 or 7 of these banks that have raided the Treasury to the tune of $700 or $800 billion, and all Obama's trying to do is trying to support the auto industry to hope it can come back. The way he's doing it, I don't think is entirely right, but I mean, that's what he's trying to do. Bill, I asked you during the break 2 things. First of all, what you thought about Rick Wagner and Obama kicking him out.
Yeah.
And now the unions are saying they want the Bank of America guy to go because he's worse than Rick Wagner. So what's happening?
Well, when you have politicians making these decisions, they make them for political reasons.
Right.
You know?
Not because it's going to build better cars.
No. Now you get Obama. Obama, with the help of Larry Summers and Geithner, made the decision, I guess, and whoever's kind of the auto czar, to get rid of Rick Wagner. May have been a good decision, may have been a bad decision. But it's basically political theater. It's basically to show we're doing something.
I totally agree.
And, you know,
I think they've interfered. They've interfered in a way that is unprecedented and unjustified. And I don't care whether you're a liberal or a conservative or what your view on government is. When the government becomes involved to the extent that they are going to pick and choose among members of I understand members of the board of directors are going to resign.
Oh, yeah.
Or
They're going to change the board. They're going to get the board
and
they
they're
like.
going to pick their own special person to run a company. They can't run a church square dance. I mean, we don't need the government running General Motors. And I don't care, you know, whether that's a conservative position or not. It's absurd.
And we're going to get green cars. Now, the Sierra Club
and
wants
nobody's
green
going to
cars.
buy them.
We're going to get green cars. Well, the government will take care of that, because one of the bills that was introduced is rebates for people from the government. So the government's going to decide what cars you buy by saying, well, if you buy this nice green car, we're going to give you some money.
The Obama administration decided Tuesday to seek a seat on the UN Human Rights Council, reversing a decision by the Bush administration to shun the United Nations premier rights body to protest the influence of repressive states. Now, by history, there were people on the Human Rights Council that were not
worst,
good people.
Yeah, the worst.
No, not all the worst. Some of the worst.
Some of the worst.
Yeah, but it was. I mean, there's 47 members. I mean, there were some bad people on there, but according to Bush, they were all bad. Okay.
Well,
you
not
know,
all.
our human rights.
Libya?
Yeah. Well.
One of those folks.
Gaddafi's our buddy now.
Yeah.
Ever since we put a missile through his front door.
But not a paragon of human rights.
No, well, of course not. Human rights are an essential element of American global foreign policy, says Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton. The decision was welcomed by the United Nations officials and rights advocates who had been briefed on the decision. Human rights activists have been advocating U.S. membership in the Council since its creation in March of 2006. Susan Rice, U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, said those who suffer from abuse and oppression around the world, as well as those who dedicate their lives to advancing human rights, need the Council to be balanced and credible, which I think is an excellent point. Balanced and credible.
Yes.
Our appearance there provides some.
I'd like to know what the UN Council on Human Rights has actually accomplished.
Well, probably not a lot, but they've only been really cooking since March of '06. And it takes time in government to get things going. Boy, you're so impatient sometimes. So negative.
Do you think, if we get on the Council to promote human rights, that Kim Jong-il will have a whole different view and have some human rights in North Korea, that enormous prison?
Baby steps. We need to take baby steps. You can't get in and run high hurdles when you're 6 months old.
I'm all for us being on that council as long as it doesn't
steps.
cost anything, because the UN is a very corrupt and inefficient organization.
But aren't you glad we have it? Really?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I think so.
I mean, we would be so much worse off, at least.
They've done a lot of crappy things,
Well,
but I am glad we have it.
I think old man Bush, when he presented the case about the invasion in Kuwait, did it right and got the international support. It was, I think, a victory by any measure.
Yeah, I've got to agree with that.
Thank you very much for joining. These opinions are our own, certainly not the opinions of the station or our staff or the people.
Or anybody with any sense.
Or anybody with any sense. We'll see you next week, and thanks for watching.